Welcome back to the Advanced Selling Podcast, the longest running sales training podcast history. I'm Bill Caskey. We're 17 and a half years in. Oh, I caught you.
Yeah, I was ready to go.
You. My co-host all 17 and a half years is Bryan Neal. Welcome, Bryan.
Hey, Bill. Good to see you. Great to be with you again.
I like to
again for the 1,000th time. We have 1,000 episodes. Do we?
Oh yeah,
we have 1,000. Way over. Got to go back and see 1,000.
17 years times 50. We're 1,100, 1,200 maybe.
Yeah, you know what we should do? We should have a watch party or listen party where we listen to our first like 3 episodes and comment on what we're saying. That would be kind of fun, wouldn't it?
Do that. We could do that.
Listeners. Okay.
There'd be some jokes.
I like it. Yeah.
Well, if you are a virgin on the journey here, journey with the Advanced Selling Podcast, there is on advancedsellingpodcast.com, there are the top 20 episodes, 15, 20, 25 episodes in terms of downloads. So if you want to start there, you don't have to begin at the very beginning. It's going to take you a long time to catch up. But if you want to do that, that's the purpose of our freedom to navigate this series and this journey however you want. So we're glad you're here. And also go to our LinkedIn page and join our group. You can go to advancedsellingpodcast.com/LinkedIn, and we'd love to say hi to you there.
Please do. It's like, what, 13,000 maybe? 14,000 people?
14,000, I think.
You know what else I love about the LinkedIn group that I never realized, like, there's benefit to like meet other people and see them stuff. The other thing is when you're doing your own selling through LinkedIn and you're doing sales research and you see someone else is in the group, that gives you a nice little reason to, a little extra thing to reach out to them and say, hey, I also see you listen to the Advanced Selling Podcast. I've been listening to those guys for 10 minutes. It's been great.
You know what I like about the LinkedIn group? Nobody puts demands on me. Nobody gives me homework assignments.
It's just easy. You're just sort of there.
Very easy. Just
like a spa.
If you ask me a question, I'll be glad to answer it. I'm sure Bryan will too, but there's no demands. It's a very comfortable, comforting group.
Just a place to be. It's like floating in those saltwater pools. Now they do that stuff, floating.
Very similar to that.
I did that. Have you done that?
No.
I did that. Yeah.
No.
The guy informed me I was woke. So that was nice when he was like asking me about the young guy who was in charge of the place, wanted to interview me before I floated to make sure I was like okay to float.
He said you were woke.
Goes, you sound pretty woke. I think we're good. I'm like, huh? Anyway.
Can you please define?
I didn't know whether to read this or not. This is a sad, bad, awful, but it's like the tone of this thing caught me. I want to get it, see if it caught you the same. There was a person I'm not going to even say the city or state, because this person was kind of well known, who found his brother decapitated in his house. It was really bad, right? So imagine you go to check on your brother you haven't seen in a while. You go into his house and he's decapitated, murdered. It's really, really awful. But the way the article is written is very interesting to me. It says, I walked in and found him. I just called 911. It was terrible. I thought his coat was up over his head and it was cold or something. I ran out back in. Then I realized it was something worse. I'm going, what? He goes, some other weird circumstances. He was it's just bad, isn't it? Right? The guy was found, his keys in his hand, his pants were pulled down, his back door was wide open. That's the weird stuff. And so what we're doing now?
That's the weird stuff. Is that right? Somewhere there?
Thank you. See, thank you. Like the weird stuff was that his keys were in his hand. I'm like, no, the weird, a little weirder, just a little weirder. I don't know. Yeah. And then they just said, God bless him, man. He said, we're just securing the property, making funeral arrangements, and taking care of my mom, and also shared that they have plans to adopt his dog.
What paper was this in? Like the Evansville Gazette? Or what?
Adopt his dog Lucky in the wake of his death.
They named his dog?
The dog's name was Lucky. Oh my God. This is the worst written article. This article should have never been written. I hate it for the family.
Where was Lucky all this time?
Exactly. Thank you. It was in the yard. It was back. It was one of the weird things that happened. I just read this article. I'm like, if you're writing this article, are you, this is not flowing well for me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just bad. I just don't think it doesn't really hit the thing. It just caught me a little odd. That's all.
No, it's like an obituary, though. The obits are typically glorious resumes of all the great things that a person did. And I always feel like just once I'd like to have a paragraph of the crap they did. Like,
would that be awesome?
Spent 5 nights in jail for shoplifting back in the 30s.
Yeah,
before accepted God as his savior or whatever. I mean, whatever.
DUIs in college. Yeah.
He was accused of rape, but he didn't. I mean, it was issue.
His kids would tell you that he was very, very non-emotive, very not emotionally available at all the entire time he raised his kids. That's really good idea, actually.
But you could say it in a way that saved face.
Yeah, right.
Didn't make him out to be some kind of a nefarious creature, evil person, evildoer. You could say it. Look, he struggled in life, as we all do, with alcoholism and drug addiction. But that was short lived. 5 years later, he was sober and he's
fine.
I mean, you could do it, but it's never that. And so then you read the obit and you're like, what's the real story?
Never mind. Exactly.
And this writer that you're quoting, she gave you the real story. So you got to give her that.
I guess so. Yeah. He's quoting the people. So I just struck me. I'm thinking there's a lot.
The coat over the head, though, that's kind of uncalled for.
It's like,
that's not
why would you write that? It's just, people are hurting. That's just a very, and then the weird part was, I'm like, that's not the weird part, man. The weird part.
Well, it's like the sports writer who asked Todd Bowles how they were going to handle the cold in Detroit.
Right.
For the game back, we're talking NFL playoffs here, and Tampa Bay played in Detroit. And the reporter said, it's 10 below in Detroit. How you people, you're used to Tampa Bay. He's like, it's an indoor arena. Hasn't been for 60 years. And, it'll be 30 seconds from the bus to the arena. So I think we'll be good.
We'll be all right.
He's good.
That's funny. Reading one of our podcast reviews on the airplane this weekend, and we get mostly really, really good reviews, and a couple of ones that we have, the guy says, these guys need to get to the point. I'm just thinking of that guy right now listening to this episode. So let's get to the point.
All right. So last week, is it okay if I take this and
love it.
At the stage? Last week, we spent some time on rapport and how do you improve the ability to create rapport with a prospect or another human being. And at the very end, we landed on something that we're going to talk about today, and that is, how do we really have good rapport with ourselves? In other words, are we aligned with who we are? Whether you look at the true self and the false self, or the spiritual self and the physical, are we aligned? Are we in rapport with ourselves? Because my belief is it's hard to love another person if you don't love yourself. It's hard to be in rapport with somebody else if inside you're a wreck. And then we say, well, they don't practice very good habits of rapport with other people. And it's like, well, they can't. They can't. Right. It's impossible. And then you relate a story of coaching, and I'll relay a story of something that I'm working on. But I'm interested in your take on that first spin.
Yeah, this is good. This is a little bit. I'd say this is a good introspective episode where you're going a little deep and thinking about your own where you are in your own journey. So working with a friend, colleague, guy I'm in another fellowship with, and he's going through some things, and we had talked about deserving. We talked about in business. We're talking about personal and business, but it was centered a little around business. Are we deserving of good things? Do we feel like we're deserving of good things in our business? It's a very deep topic, because there are a lot of people that inside, like you said, Bill, they'll have external rapport and they'll go through the process and quote the big deal, but inside they are not prepared for the big deal. They're not comfortable with accepting whatever comes along with that. Could be responsibility that comes along with it. Could be commission that comes along with it. Could be a promotion that comes along with it. And we see this all the time. We see it. I see it myself, and then I see it in others. Is processing that each step of the way when you start to hit ceilings or maybe you self-sabotage. That stuff is really strong and powerful. And needs to be looked at and addressed and thought about, I think.
I agree. And, the beautiful thing about the business we're in is that we're kind of forced to do that with ourselves too. So if we're going to be good coaches and trainers and advisors, counselors, we have to be on top of our game, or at least be willing to work on the game if we're not on top of it at all times. So it's like it's a constant, it's in our face constantly. It's like, oh, well, he's really struggling with this. Well, wait a minute, I'm kind of struggling with that too. Maybe I should take a look at myself.
Yeah. And I think the first step in this is to kind of self-examine. All of us have these boundaries up and down. So we have a ceiling that we hit our head against, and we have this kind of warning track thing that you've mentioned in the past on the deck that we won't go below. And I think it's important to examine those things. And you can put whatever label you want on it. You could put commission, income, net worth, a business event. An example would be writing a book. People would say, I've always wanted to write a book. Okay. Like, yeah, but then you'll justify, do I feel worthy? Like one of my peers in the coaching business, he and I talked as he got into it, and he's like, I don't have anything to say and no one will listen to me. Even if I did. That was his two mantras. And I talked to him a little bit about my experience. I'm like, I thought the same thing. And the fact is, people don't know the stuff that's normal to you, stuff that's automatic to you and me. People don't know it, and they will listen. And there's a new generation of people that will listen. And helping yourself get over that, saying, okay, maybe there is something to share here, and it's okay, is a good first step. So examining the boundaries, the where am I hitting the ceiling? And that's usually resistance around something. Could be a deal size. Someone saying, I work with a kid, 20-year-old guy, but young guy, is really great to work with. And he broke through his ceiling, but now he's got a new ceiling. He said something, he talked about starting a business, and he said, capital is going to be my problem. Capital is my problem. Meaning he said he doesn't have cash. He doesn't have cash to invest in, buy a business. I'm like, no, we're not going to say capital is my problem. There's capital all over the place.
That's right.
How many people do you know that would invest in a young, enterprising,
a lot,
thousands and thousands. He's like, oh my gosh, you're right. Because that's that's his thing. He had to examine that rapport within himself around his availability to get investors was very, very low. He thought it was hard and impossible. And it's the opposite, really, if you do it right. So that's my first step. Examining.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think, one of the things that I'm always mindful of is that I think we were all, this is going to sound really cliche-ish, but born for greatness. We all have greatness as a part of our DNA, and greatness you can define however you want, but greatness is probably not accepting average. Greatness is probably not saying, oh, I don't want to make more money because then it would mess my life up, or I'm just going to sit around and watch, the news programs all day and eat Fritos. What is greatness for you? And I think we have to define that, obviously, but I'm always struggling with what does that mean? And am I living my life that way? And if God truly has put a seed inside us that is supposed to blossom and prosper, and we're supposed to nourish it so that we can be great in whosever eyes we want, in God's eyes or our eyes or spouse's eyes. And I'm always trying to find that line between gratitude. I'm grateful for what I have, and there's a greatness beyond this that I can both be grateful and pursue greatness.
Yes, that's really good. I would argue, I don't think you can pursue greatness without being grateful. I think you have to be grateful. I agree. I also think this is where, so Dan Sullivan talks about this measuring backward. It's one of his tools that he teaches, and even he teaches you to start meetings with, he calls it, the tool is called a positive focus. That's what Dan Sullivan calls it. And it's meant to be a measuring backward of what you've done, how far you've come, progress on a project, or it could be like, you and I can sit back and go, you know what? We're really proud of our podcast here. We've got 1,200 episodes. We've stuck to it for 17 and a half years. And we're really proud of that. Can we sell it for $10 million? Not quite, close. We're getting there, but who cares? I mean, we should feel really proud about that, and we deserve what comes along with it. That sort of thing. Measuring backward is a thing, I think.
Yeah,
measuring
I like backward. I like that. So how much of inner rapport is it about, am I doing what I've been planted on this planet to do? Am I really serving my highest and best use? Or am I in a position that is just where I'm in my element? Like, I feel like the work that we do, and there's days when we're doing things that's not in our element, but things like this, podcasting and YouTube is our element.
Yep.
And I'm not speaking for you. I'm just assuming that we would still be doing
this.
You
can speak for me. It's been 17 and a half years. Yeah. You can speak for me.
But even the work that we do separately, you have your own business, I've got mine. We're in our element when we're helping people and growing people. So my question is if I'm not doing something that's the Lord's work, and I don't mean that in a religious way, but in a higher dimension way, is it possible for me to be in rapport in that job? Or am I just faking it, in other words?
Right. Yeah, that's a great thing to examine. I mean, I think Rick Rubin talks about this a bit. I don't know if I mentioned that on this podcast. Rick Rubin's a music producer, executive music producer for the Beastie Boys. Is how I know him the most, but he's produced lots. We talked about him. I think I talked about him a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
right. About Johnny Cash and that sort of thing. And I think I said the same thing, as I'm just going to requote from a few episodes ago, that that passion thing that you have, so that higher purpose, I think we just apply it in a different way. That higher purpose you're talking about, Bill, doesn't necessarily have to come from your job that you're doing. This is Rick Rubin's version of that. So to your point, you may be, so I've got a client who is very, very, very dedicated to geriatric care. That's her calling. If you met this woman, she is all about taking care of elderly and caring for them and making sure they get a good life and all this stuff.
Very nice.
And she's a salesperson. She sells software and she side hustles her other stuff.
Beautiful.
And it's great. And when you talk to her, you feel, to your point, Bill, that we're asking about, you feel she is in rapport with herself. You will 100% feel that. And because she does the stuff outside of the work, I feel like she's more in rapport in work. She talks about it openly. It's on her LinkedIn. She makes no bones about it. It's part of her, who she is, like me being a ref or you playing basketball in college is part of who we are. And that makes it very aligned. And so that's I like that. Came to mind as you mentioned that.
So she gets her passion needs or her higher dimension needs met basically after 5. Or on the weekends where I think that's perfectly fine. And she's, and I'm sure she's not miserable at work, because it sounds like that kind of person is not going to tolerate a miserable existence 8 to 5.
Right. Totally. I think it's the opposite. I think she's happier. She's
probably happier. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she's a better salesperson. And then she makes more money and is able to help her
fund.
Yeah. It's a big circle. But it's that alignment. And that I think what some people will do is they keep that other thing a secret from people.
Yeah.
And that causes the angst, what you're talking about, that angst of personal rapport. Like, I don't want everybody to know that
I can't go to that party tonight. I know there's people there, but anybody that gets out,
they find out I go play charades with old people on the weekends, I'll never get invited to another party.
Yeah.
Like, she's not like that.
Which is, of course, never the case.
Never the case. People love it because it's you. It's your true you. Yeah.
So what else in terms of inner rapport should we be looking at? You mentioned self-sabotage, or the idea that when we get to a point of success and we shrink or we back down. I'm guilty of that many times in my career. And eventually I'll push through it and do it. But in the moment, I'll think, well, you know what? It's not time. It's just not, nobody else is doing this. Why would I do it?
Right.
And there's something about this idea of trusting our instincts that we are just not good at. We write something down. So, what would be cool is if we did a video podcast on a weekly basis and we did this and this and this. Oh yeah, but that's going to take time. We don't have kind of camera. My camera's not right. My audio. We just talk ourselves out of it. When it is, if the instinct was there that it was a good idea, shouldn't we write it down and at least explore it a little bit rather than immediately saying, "Oh, that's not going to work."
100%. That's the biggest symptom of this, this angst or this out of integrity with your personal rapport with yourself. That to me is the biggest one.
Okay.
Is the first thing you think of, like you're saying, like, I want to write a book. I hate writing. It takes a long time. I hate editing. It's no fun. No one's going to buy the book. Then I got to promote it. If that's the first thing, that's, right? No. And then that's what you're doing. What you're really saying is, I'm not comfortable writing a book yet. And then I got to say, why aren't I comfortable with writing a book?
Yeah.
Then it's an ink and everybody knows what I think. Or what if I say something that pisses people off or whatever,
Yeah, but tell yourself the truth. That is part of that rapport. Is, are we leveling with ourselves?
Yeah.
We think of rapport with another. We can be honest. We can be maybe not 100%. We'd be 90% honest. We can share with somebody else that we love and we trust and we rapport. Maybe it's our spouse, partner, whatever.
Yeah.
Do we have those same conversations with ourselves where we say, we keep saying, oh, you know what? I want to write a book. No, you don't. You don't want to write a book.
Right.
If you wanted to write a book, you would have written a book. You could say, though, my plan is to write a book someday. Not there yet.
That's it. That's it. And accepting that as okay, not beating myself up like, I know I got to write a book. I know I got to, we do that. We dispense advice and people are like, I know. I'm like, be at peace with it. That's cool. When the time is right, the time will be right.
Yeah.
Right. We'd say start a podcast. I know we got to start a podcast. You know, you've been talking about that for 10 years. I'm like, it's fine, man.
How many
When
times
it's right, it's right. All of them. Like, and so, but what is not okay for me is people beating themselves up over that.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets back to inner rapport is not okay. Then that shows itself in other parts of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
I've got a client who probably is a listener who, she and I just had this discussion. We've been talking about a video and a this and a that for 6 months, and other people inside the company are doing it. One guy's really crushing it with it.
Yeah.
And she keeps saying, I just need to do that. I said, look, stop. No, you don't. You're not doing it.
Not
so
there.
You don't need to do it. Find something else. Video's not your thing. That's cool. It's not everybody's thing. It shouldn't be.
Nope.
If everybody shot video all the time, it's so find a thing that's your thing, and don't keep promising yourself that, next month's going to be different.
Yeah.
Because it won't be.
There's a great book that I have called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
Is that
Ravikant? Love Yourself. That's Ravikant. Yeah. Kamal Ravikant.
I love that book.
Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. It is a fantastic book that talks about the author's personal experience with this, which what we're labeling would be, he would be out of, integrity, out of rapport with his personal rapport, and how he got back into it. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depended on It.
Yeah, I like that book. I read that book during the dark days of COVID.
Yeah, it's truth. I did too. Same. Yeah. We got to get there. So.
All right, guys, make sure you come join our LinkedIn group, advancedsellingpodcast.com/LinkedIn. Leave us a note there. Say, hey. Say hey to us. And we'll see you next time.
Okay. See you. Bye.